Hello and welcome everyone. I think we will wait a little bit longer for more people to join, but I would say welcome to you, Austin. Austin from Solana is here with us today. We're so
Hey, how you
happy to have
doing?
you, Austin. Hi, I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well, doing well. Glad to be here today.
Good.
This will be fun.
Where in the world are you? What's your time zone?
I am based in New York.
Okay,
Yes.
so you are maybe 6 hours after
Yeah,
me,
it's
I
noon
guess.
here.
Noon, yeah, all right. I was 6 o'clock in the evening.
There we go.
Great. So I think some people will join. Oh, I thought lots of people would just jump in. Maybe Twitter has. Elon did something weird today that
Yeah,
people have
Twitter's been
trouble
weird the
to
last few
joining.
days. There's a bunch of accounts that have gotten limited or restricted. It's kind of unclear what's going on, but
Ah,
yeah, I think they're mucking with stuff behind the scenes.
they're trying to make it more difficult for us to gather, maybe.
Yeah, it seems like
Well,
a weird
we
business
are gonna,
strategy, but we will see.
yeah, we can chit chat a little bit and see to people to let people join, I guess. Now I see some more people joining. I thought we were going to have like hundreds of people in here right now by now. That's usual, but
We'll see, we'll
so
see.
something must be wrong because this is
I know,
Solana
right?
is here. All right, so ladies and gentlemen who are in here, very welcome to Crypto Miners Twitter Space. My name is Mary, and I will be hosting Solana today. And I also like to point out that we give information and education about the projects we host here. No financial advice whatsoever. But here's one, actually. You should always do your own research and never invest more than you could afford to lose. So that's my financial advice for today for you guys. That's a safe one to give, right?
That's a safe one, I think.
That's a safe one. So Austin Federa, Head of Strategy and Communications, are with us here today to talk about Solana. So Austin, why don't we start by you telling us a little bit more about who you are, when you started with Solana, and what did you do previous that?
Yeah, certainly. So I joined Solana Labs initially in January of 2021. So pretty early. I think there were about 30 programs on the network at that point that had daily transactions running through them. Not many people had really heard of Solana. Not many people were kind of using the network. In typical crypto fashion, I was product slash marketing is, the title they give you when you join an organization. I think this is one of like the really cool things about a lot of blockchain organizations is we don't really follow typical titles or structures or roles. But yeah, been here now for about 2 years. I moved over to the Solana Foundation side in June of 2022, and I was head of communications at the organizations for about a year, and then recently transitioned over to head of strategy role. So really kind of fun and interesting organization to be a part of. Before that, I was working for Bison Trails, which is a blockchain infrastructure company that got acquired by Coinbase. I was running product marketing for them over there. And before that, I was working in a few other stealth crypto companies, one that got acquired, one that went nowhere. But I kind of got my start in this space initially. Well, apart from, buying Bitcoin and losing the keys in like 2010 or something like that. But my first real start in the space was like mid to late 2017. I was working for a fintech company in New York that was trying to pivot to build a borrow lend token on Ethereum. Project never really went anywhere. Company shut down maybe 3 months after I joined, but that kind of got me bit with the crypto bug, and have been working in the space ever since.
Great. So yeah, crypto is the way for you to go, I guess.
Yeah, look, I think there's something really, I was one of those people who like thought a lot about like the type of work I wanted to do. I spent a while thinking about if I wanted to go get a PhD and kind of work in some of that in that space on, all of my kind of undergraduate stuff was on
Hmm.
government and like policy management around scarce resources and how do you get like disparate groups of people to sort of collectively self-organize for whether that's, managing a fishery responsibly or a forest or, something along those lines. And, it's kind of funny because it's come full circle, right? Blockchains are dealing with all of the same types of problems that like weirdly environmental governments and like climate change actually deal with as well in very
Yeah,
different ways of how do
actually.
you get people all around the world with their own self-interest to work together. And I think one of the coolest things about blockchain is that it's a giant machine for incentive alignment, and we've really never seen anything that is able to bring incentive alignment together to produce positive results on the scale that a blockchain can do.
Yeah, I had a CEO from a foundation here the other day, and we talked also about how similar, like a DAO is. It's a little bit political almost, Yeah, like you
Oh yeah.
vote and you, yeah,
Yeah, I think we deeply underestimate how like if blockchain is successful at, taking over even a third of the software that we use, we're gonna, the problems facing blockchain communities are gonna be very different than the kinds facing now. They're gonna stop being quite as technical. They're gonna be start being a little bit more human problems.
hmm,
The same way that like most of the problems with Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and Instagram, they're not technical problems, they're human problems. And I think it's a process of the blockchain community almost maturing into a place where our biggest problems are no longer technical, but are now human.
No, it's the same with the big, with the, like a phone. You use the phone, you don't understand 100% how it works or what kind of tech it's behind it, but you know which button to press and
Yeah.
or swipe and what you can
Yes.
do with it. And that's what similar, I think, where crypto has to go somewhere. But we shouldn't move into that maybe now. We should talk more about Solana first. And I mean, Solana has been around for a while, and most people in here has heard about it. But uh, what can we tell about Solana from maybe the history of Solana and the journey so far? How has it been? Or can you?
Yeah. So Solana was conceived of originally as an incredibly fast global state settlement layer. And it still is that, right? But or sorry, execution layer. So there's this idea that probably the biggest innovation that Ethereum brought, apart from smart contracts, right, as the first smart contract blockchain, was the idea that everything was operating in one global state. This is the idea of atomic transactions, of composability, that you can borrow from one protocol and in the same transaction, you can execute a trade on another exchange, and then you can return that borrowed money all in one atomic transaction, right? These are called flash loans, and they're people use them with varying degrees of success. But that is something that is not possible in the traditional financial world, right? You can't go and go to a bank and say, "Hey, I have money in this other bank. Can I borrow money from you to trade on this other exchange?" Like that doesn't happen. And so what Solana was really built to solve was that execution environment problem. Where can we build something that's going to be able to handle a NASDAQ level of volume of transactions and provide fast finality and a high transaction throughput in short block times? That was really the original vision of the network. And so that's kind of that place that was built out from. But the network has, literally the original pitch deck say blockchain at NASDAQ speed. Now, what we've seen is that if you build an incredibly fast execution environment, that turns out to be really great for all sorts of use cases, whether that's NFTs or gaming or DAOs or, communities, in addition to DeFi. And that's been one of the really cool things to see how the community has taken a lot of the advantages of the Solana network and used them in ways that the original, core developers never really thought of as the primary feature.
That's good. So the
Yeah.
users are making their own way through Solana.
Oh
Is
yeah,
that what
and
you're
this
saying?
is this is
Yeah.
one of the things that's really exciting about working on any blockchain and Solana especially is that the stuff that people are able to build on these networks is far beyond what the people at the foundation or, as core developers could have ever thought would get built. I think this is kind of analogous to when the iPhone and the early Android phones launched. I don't think anyone at Apple or Google was like, these are going to change dating forever. Right? But
No,
like,
right. Yeah, it's
but
evolving, right? Then
yeah, but
that's how
like
it
having
should
a
be, I
touch
think.
screen, having a camera phone, having an application, like that has such profound impact on the fabric of like our society and our culture. Um, and blockchains are kind of the next evolution of that. Like the mobile revolution created a whole new category of ideas. I think what we're seeing in blockchain is even more than that. So
Yeah.
I think Solana is one of the most exciting ecosystems to sort of experiment and build what's next, but also have a platform that's powerful enough and scalable enough that it can really rival Web2 services and their ability to reach users.
But there has come lots of other new blockchains after Solana. Solana was, like you said, 21. And so how do you stand out then amongst those? And why did you, because you just said it's one of the most interesting, and of course you're biased, but what
Sure.
what's your point
I mean,
to everyone listening now? Why should they choose Solana to build on as developers instead of something else?
yeah, so even if you strip away consensus message transactions and, some of the vote transactions and those sorts of things, Solana still settles more real-world user transactions every day than any other blockchain, as a higher throughput than any other blockchain. And that's because that's what it's optimized for. It's not trying to compete with Bitcoin as a reserve currency, right, or something along those lines. It's trying to do something that's a little bit different. Um, I think one of the really interesting things to look at is the scalability plan of any specific chain. So Solana scales through hardware and software. Obviously, there's like software upgrades that can be made to any system to make it more performant. But a lot of the core of that is how fast of hardware can you throw at solving the problem? How fast of bandwidth can you get for global interconnects? And so one of the cool things about Solana is it piggybacks on the billions of dollars of R&D that people are putting into, making CPUs faster, making GPUs faster, making increased bandwidth and connectivity possible around the world. So even if there was no additional code development on the network, it would still keep getting faster as people put more hardware towards it. Now, Bitcoin obviously works the opposite way. As there's more hardware power available, it actually increases the security of the network and increases the hash rate and all that sort of stuff. Solana uses that additional power to increase the transaction throughput. So what you can see is more dependable scaling that doesn't revolve around things like, look, the Ethereum community has moved mountains and done an incredible job to move that system from a
You're
proof of
going in
work
and
to a
out.
proof of stake system.
Can you?
You're losing me here.
Yeah, now you're back. We didn't hear the last sentence you said now. And now we don't hear you again.
Let me see. Sorry about that.
Can you guys hear him? Can I have a thumbs up if you can hear him?
Yeah, can you
Maybe
guys hear
it's...
me?
Well, now we can again. All right, let's move on. We'll see. Austin, are you talking?
Me.
I don't know who it is. It's always like this. You don't know if it's me or if it's
What
you
were
or
we
if it...
chatting about?
So guys, does Austin go in and out for you as well, or is it only me?
Yeah, are we still connected here?
Can I have some feedback? Okay, maybe I should leave and come back.
Can I get some thumbs up if people can hear me? Okay, cool. All right, great. I see one here of the wave or thumb up. Oh, I think we lost our host. Did we? Interesting. Great. Okay, cool. So, Mary, can you hear me? So the skill, I'll just kind of keep going and let me know if there's anything that doesn't work out here. So one of the things we were talking about is the hardware scalability. And so the Ethereum community has moved mountains in order to get um, the system up and running and moved over from proof of work to proof of stake. But those were all fundamentally software changes that took a huge number of years to actually get through into fruition from a testing environment and a testnet process. And look, this is not shade at all at the Ethereum community. What they did was pretty groundbreaking in the ability to migrate a system over, but that relied on software innovation and sort of the idea of like there's very smart people working on this and they're going to come up with new ways to do something. And, that can work really well, but you're depending on innovation that's not predictable and not steady state. And so the scalability that for Solana is able to offer comes from improvements in hardware performance. It's not dependent on breakthroughs in software because breakthroughs aren't predictable, right? And of course, when a breakthrough comes, you can still take advantage of it. But that steady state scalability, I think, is really key for developers to have a stable platform to be able to build on and know that the scalability is going to come. If you were someone like Audius who was trying to build a global decentralized music streaming platform on a network, if there's a 3-year delay in the time it takes to get up to the ability to handle hundreds or thousands of transactions per second, that can be existential for your business.
Great. I'm back. Can you hear me now, Austin?
I can hear you, yes.
Very good. Yeah. Great. You were doing good. You took over a bit there, and that's perfect. I had to leave and come back, but I'm here now. So, yes. So I missed a little bit there, but we are talking about Solana here, guys, and Austin is here talking with us. And yes, Austin, what else? I mean, there has been a little bit controversials about Solana recently, right? The FTX and Solana connections are
Yeah.
like talked
Yeah, we can talk a bit
about,
about
and
that.
maybe we should talk about that, the elephant in the
Yeah.
room, before so we can move on to brighter
Yeah,
things.
certainly. So Solana's mainnet beta launched in March of 2020, and somewhere around June or July of 2020, Totally had been going around giving this demo to a huge number of people, which is basically this application that still exists today. If you go to Solana.com, you can scroll down to the very bottom of the footer, and there's this link to something called Break. And Break is a demo on testnet where you basically smash the keys on the keyboard and you can see transactions confirming on the blockchain in real time. And that demo was really a galvanizing moment for a ton of high frequency trading folks and people who build exchanges to say, oh, it's actually possible to run something like a central limit order book on chain. So most DeFi applications in the world use an AMM or a constant function market maker, something along those lines. And those are really innovative systems that require very few transactions to maintain, and they're very transaction efficient. But Solana is built sort of for a different paradigm, right? So if you think about like the 2G world or even the 3G world of cell phones back in the day, like the first iPhones and the first Android phones, those lived in an area where data and bandwidth and transactions were scarce and expensive. And Solana is built for a system to provide cheap and abundant transactions. And what that means is that when the transaction isn't the precious thing you're trying to optimize around, when the gas fee isn't the thing that's holding you back, you can build different types of order books. And so Serum, which was built largely by FTX engineers, was a central limit order book built on chain. It was the first central limit order book built on chain at scale. Um, and this thing, this code ended up being a really key part of the Solana DeFi ecosystem. Now, when FTX, pretty publicly and catastrophically collapsed, a few months ago, the community acted really quickly to take that code and fork it and redeploy it as something called open book. And so, in the early days of their engagement with the Solana network, the folks at FTX and Alameda were building real technology that couldn't be built on any other blockchain. And somewhere along the lines, it seems like their business incentives really changed to something that wasn't as interesting or altruistic. And so the work that the Solana Foundation was doing with them really wrapped up in sort of the summer of 2021 when they were much more focused on, permissioned DeFi and lobbying the US Congress and activities like that, which, weren't really of interest to the work we're doing at Solana Foundation. Sam and FTX and Alameda were obviously large token holders, but they'd also invested heavily in other systems. They invested, somewhere around $50 million in Polygon and Sui and Aptos. Solana just was the first chain that they were big supporters and builders on.
Yeah, I mean there were lots of others who also invested in and also lost money in that crash. That's not so fun, but also it
No.
brought attention to crypto, maybe in a bad way, but as I sometimes say that there is no bad marketing really. It's just marketing, and I mean we have a hurdle maybe now to climb, but we will. More
Yeah,
people
I
know
mean
about crypto also
yeah,
because
it's
of
sort
this.
of
So
like, right, like Enron was obviously the largest bankruptcy, one of the largest bankruptcies in history. Um,
okay,
But Enron's bankruptcy wasn't, it didn't kill the idea that you could have an energy market, right? It didn't
exactly.
kill the ideas that it was behind. The company may have been a fraud and may have been, kind of morally bankrupt in that process, but the work they were doing was picked up by others who were actually responsible, managers and owners. And we have energy markets now that are the main way that energy is actually bought and sold on international markets. And that was the stuff that Enron was doing in the early days. So I think this technology lives on. What we've really seen from the wake of this FTX implosion, there's now actually more validators on Solana than before
Hmm.
FTX crashed and exploded. There's actually more on-chain transactions than before. Solana is routinely the network that's the highest number of active users per day using the network. So I think there was some fear and there were doom and gloom and there were headlines that like, oh, this is the end for Solana. And what we've really seen over the last 2 months is that that's not the case. That developers are still here, the community is still here, people are still building and trading on the network, and there's a bright future ahead even in
Yeah,
2023.
I mean you got attention. Maybe it's
I mean,
bad
there is
for
that,
a bit,
yes.
and maybe you can turn it around. I mean, it's what you make of it, right? And of course, some people lost lots of money. And as I said in the beginning, my only advice is never to invest more than you can afford to lose. It's not fun, but you will still be able to have a roof over your head if you don't put up your
Yeah, and this is kind of
house for for.
yeah, this is kind of the story of 2022 though, right? Which is that apart from Terra, all of the
Mhm.
failures were failures of centralized entities and centralized exchanges,
Yeah,
right? Three Arrows Capital, FTX, Celsius, all of these were not DeFi. They weren't blockchain. They were actually just centralized exchanges that
yeah.
got themselves into trouble and failed. And I think that's like a really important thing to remember is like DeFi actually largely worked the way it was supposed to work.
So how does Solana work with DeFi and to bring that more forward? What, I mean, in the future, what's your prognose there or your future
Yeah, so
plans?
Solana DeFi is really interesting. It's very different than the DeFi that you find on Ethereum or other networks. In part, just the value tends to be a little bit lower of like TVL and those sorts of things. But one of the interesting things is because the transaction fees are not a limiting factor, every single program is auto compounding for DeFi. And you can see people able to do, arbitrage trades for $10 of value because the transaction fee is 0.00025 dollars. And so because of that, DeFi is built in a pretty different way. You see types of things like we talked about before, like the central limit order book, which you can't build on something like Ethereum. And then you see different types of products and services getting spun up. I think DeFi and Solana is still kind of in a little bit of the early stage, but what we're seeing is a lot of experimentation with what can we build when we have sort of an unlimited bucket of transactions to pull from, and the cost to do that is really low. I think it's going to be a very interesting kind of settlement or execution layer for DeFi going forwards.
Hmm, interesting. I mean, Solana was also one of the first that had NFTs, right?
I mean, yeah, so NFTs are interesting on Solana. From a technical standpoint, they're very different from other networks. And one of the
Okay.
reasons for that is they exist entirely in, I guess, what you'd call user space. So, on other networks, you have ERC 721 or 1440, and those are protocol level specs that are developed and maintained, and they're put into kind of the core repo. On Solana, NFTs are run through a lot of things called token metadata and other types of programs, which um, don't actually require anything special on the validator or network level for them to be on the chain. But NFTs on Solana, they cost about 12 cents to mint. And there's a whole bunch of technical reasons for that. One of which is a concept on Solana called program reusability, which is means you don't have to deploy the minting contract every time you're minting an NFT. You can just hit up an on-chain program that says, if you feed me data, it will output it this way. It's basically, a formula on chain. And so using those types of things, you're able to dramatically reduce the cost of creating NFTs, um, which is part of where I think a lot of the excitement has come about NFTs on Solana. But this kind of came as a surprise to a bunch of us, right? If you roll back the clock to, May of 2021, we had a small skunkworks project to develop an open source framework that someone could build an NFT standard on. And that thing was taken by Everstake and launched into Metaplex. But there wasn't like a grand vision of, oh, this is going to be a massive move into NFTs. This was kind of a little bit of a fun, I wouldn't call it side project, but this was an experiment to see like, oh, are NFTs on Solana something that folks would be interested in? And you fast forward half a year
Yeah, I
later,
mean,
and they
it
were
blew up a little bit. I mean,
it
Ethereum might be the
totally blew
biggest
up.
one, but I'm not sure. But maybe Solana is the second biggest one with NFTs, or maybe it's
Yeah, so
Binance now.
Ethereum NFTs are significantly more valuable on average than Solana
Mm-hmm.
NFTs, but the number of NFTs traded and minted on Solana exceeds Ethereum by a
Ah, okay.
significant margin. And so it's sort of just like DeFi, you're seeing very different kinds of use cases for stuff built on Solana compared to other blockchains. And that's kind of where like this is idea of like, oh, is Solana like an Ethereum killer? And the answer is like, no, they're actually both networks are trying to do kind of different things. And I think the market's obviously big enough for multiple visions of what a solution can be.
Yeah. All right. I see we have some big names in here. I'm just inviting you guys. If you want to come up and talk and have a question, be my guest. If not, that's fine. So let's see. You have also a foundation, right? Solana
Yes.
Foundation. Can you talk a little bit about that? What's the purpose of the foundation? And yeah, how
Yeah,
old is it?
certainly. So the Solana Foundation is a nonprofit organization headquartered in Switzerland, as most blockchain foundations are. And its mission is really to support the growth and adoption of the Solana network globally. And what that means is it's the entity that gives out grants. It does a bunch of the work around figuring out what the network needs in terms of building an infrastructure over the long term. And it kind of operates as like a sort of like a United Nations, and I mean that in all good and bad ways. The Solana Foundation actually has very little power to do anything, but it's sort of a convening organization to come up with standards for the network, and it is designed to make those sort of public good resource investments that no individual or group of people on the network necessarily has the incentive to do, but everyone would benefit from. This is pretty similar to how the Ethereum Foundation ran in the early days. The Ethereum Foundation today is much more of a research organization, and Solana Foundation is still an engineering organization. But projects like the second validator client called Firedancer, that was made possible in part due to a grant from the Solana Foundation and sort of coordination activities from the foundation to develop a universal protocol spec and a binary interface that then the team who's building that second validator client can build against. So it's a lot of those sort of like fundamentals that, in a if we're saying, blockchains or cities or countries, this is sort of like the municipal government, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and I assume that also one big task for for the foundation is also to bring it out to more people. I mean, to get the word out there about Solana for non-crypto people, right? To help mass adoption.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the foundation itself is not necessarily a marketing organization in sort of the traditional sense. I think, my opinion is that the best marketing for the network are all of the amazing projects that developers are building on the network. And that, advertising people, oh, look at Solana, here's a place, here's a community you should join, would sort of be like advertising Docker or advertising, as a reason that you should use a particular web service or something like that. I think that like too often in crypto, we focus on technology stories as opposed to user stories or user
Yes,
experience
I
stories.
agree.
Yes.
I
And so,
very much agree.
I think the Solana's technology is really exciting to developers and engineers and folks building
Yeah, for
on it,
sure.
but it shouldn't be that interesting to someone who just wants to use the system, right? I think
No.
that's kind of like we view the applications built on the network as the reason people join the network, not the underlying technology.
Yeah. But don't you know that there's still an over amount, I don't know the word, but there's more no more devs and technical people still in crypto than normal Johnsons or whatever
Yes.
you say in
Yeah,
America.
exactly, right.
In
So
Sweden
for
we say
them it's
Svenssons, but
yeah,
but yeah.
yeah, right. But at the same time, there's about 500,000 daily active users on applications on Solana, and the majority of
Mm,
those are not developers. They're people who are using StepN. They're people who are trading on Orca or Mango Markets or OpenBook or something along those lines. They're
yeah.
joining NFT communities and being parts of
We're
NFT
getting
projects.
there.
And
We're
yeah,
getting
I
there,
think
I
we're
think.
getting there. And actually, like
Yeah.
the Solana NFT community is known for drama, I would say, above anything else. It's a very high drama community, and we love them for it. But I think part of that is there's not that many technical people involved in the Solana NFT community. Like as a percentage of the
Ah,
people
okay.
who are, yeah, as a percentage of the
More
people
drama
who are
queens.
involved in NFTs, oh, one project's mad at another project. There's debates about what the right implementation or standard version of something is. These are all really good conversations to be having. And it's part of what makes distributed governance hard. But what we've seen is a lot there are a lot more people involved in that who are not engineers. I think it's been really that's kind of what I was talking about in the beginning, where it's like as we get more people onto blockchains, the types of problems we have move from being engineering problems to being more human problems.
Yeah. All right. I'm sorry, I get some messages here. I'm trying to read at the same time that I'm talking. We have also Jess up here. Welcome, Jess. Why don't you?
Hey, good morning. Yeah,
Good
thank you for having
morning.
me up. And Austin, thank you for coming here. I did have a question. So you've talked a lot about, what's being built on Solana and so forth. But is there any effort or plans being put in by the Solana Foundation in regards to interoperability? I know, one of the things when we think about Solana, it's kind of like in its own little world. But a lot of people feel that the future is going to be multi-chain, and just wanted to see if there's anything in the works for that from the Solana side.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, one of the major interoperability initiatives is Wormhole. Wormhole is a decentralized bridge system, and that was first and primarily built on Solana. So I think the thing that we're starting to see is that um, if you love Bitcoin or Ethereum, you should trade it on Solana, right? I think this is the place, and like bridges have to mature to a state where they're fully trustless and they're worthy of users and all of that thing to make sure that people feel safe doing it. But the interoperability for Solana comes from the ability to move assets. I mean, there's an NFT bridge for Solana. There's asset bridges to most chains at this point. I think the only major one we're missing is a IBC connector for Cosmos, but that's kind of in the works too. Um, and as an execution environment, Solana's not really competing with the settlement layer in that way. I think one of the coolest projects I saw using Wormhole was not at all Solana related. And unfortunately, it was on Terra and Anchor, and so it was only live for like a week before that whole ecosystem, unfortunately, kind of died. But they were using Wormhole's framework, where from Avalanche you could call contracts on Terra in Anchor. So it would basically send a message over the bridge, and then it would execute natively on Anchor. And there's been a few folks experimenting with that kind of thing on Solana, where you could use Solana as basically the execution layer and the clearinghouse for all sorts of cross-chain dexes and swaps, even if your transactions are settling on, let's say, Ethereum, or hypothetically even like the Bitcoin network or something along those lines. But the work of actually matching orders and trading would take place on Solana. There's some folks using some interesting technology. I'm actually not sure how released this is, so I'm going to be a little bit vague on it. But they're trying to build a governance system where they would reduce the cost of voting in Ethereum DAOs by basically offloading the vote process for governance onto a network like Solana, or onto Solana specifically in this case. And what that would mean is that, Constitution DAO was this amazing thing that happened, but people couldn't get their money back because the gas fees were too high. People didn't vote in the governance proposals because they were like, well, it's going to cost me $10 to vote. I only have $50 in this thing. It's not worth it for me to vote on this proposal. And so if you could do something like offload the governance level for projects onto a different network, it has much lower transaction fees, you're actually going to get to a place where that would improve the quality of governance on networks like Ethereum. So I think there's a ton of really cool interoperability projects folks are working on. The biggest barrier right now is Solana is not EVM compatible. It is built on a totally different runtime environment, and there's a few projects like Solang and Neon that are bringing an EVM compatibility layer to Solana. But fundamentally, you have to learn something new if you want to program on Solana. And not hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of developers have decided that's a worthy investment for them. But there's a learning curve there, and so that's part of why Solana can sometimes feel like it's a little isolated from the EVM ecosystem.
Great, thank you, Jess. Great question. It's always so fun to bring up people with native English. Their questions are so more sophisticated than my questions.
You're doing a great job.
Oh, thank you. Anyway, I wanted to talk more about education also, because what do you do for non-crypto people? Because that's, I think, one of the most important things for every project, big or small, to try and mass adopt in new people into crypto.
So I think this kind of goes back to some of the stuff we were saying before, which is that the foundation's position here is that most of the best educational work for non-crypto folks is done by the projects themselves. Now, an area where we do have a large educational initiative running is to get developers who are currently building on Web 2 to build stuff on Solana. And I would say this transition is one of kind of the most important ones. There's a ton of people who work for, big tech companies in Web 2 or even like Web 1 or Web 0, and they're kind of disillusioned with what they're doing now. I think we've entered a phase in big tech where the market opportunity is pretty small in terms of expansion into new areas. And so, it's Google testing 40 shades of blue. It's, Meta's entire business is basically an ad engine at the end of the day. Most of Google's core business is an ad engine at the end of the day. And, as the desires to monetize as much as possible happens, the amount of, to be clear, there's still very real and serious product and engineering work being done in all these organizations, but that ratio is starting to shift. And I think what we're seeing is a lot of Web 2 developers say, maybe I've made a ton of money in Web 2, maybe I've had an 8-year career here, but what I really want to go do is I want to build something new in Web 3. I want to build something new on a new platform where I feel like there's more freedom, there's more willingness to experiment. And that those folks are coming and choosing Solana. And they're choosing Solana in part because the transaction and programming model is similar to the process of building on Web 2, right? This is sort of the thing about how transactions are abundant and cheap as opposed to scarce and expensive. And that's one of the areas that we've seen just a lot of interest in building on Solana. And there's tons of developer resources and actual coursework that we run as well to make sure that those developers can get resources they need. They can, we have a boot camp running in Chicago right now for developers who are looking to build on the network, as well as these hacker houses that we run all around the world. You can go to solana.com/events to see a list of those there. But most of our educational work right now is focused on developers.
Yeah, because those are the ones who can build the things for normal people, right? And then they go out
exactly,
and talk
right?
about it.
Our whole thing is that those people who are coming to the network are coming to it for the products and that are built on top of the network, not the network itself.
The utility of what they can use.
Yes.
Use something for, instead of just crypto and trying to get rich fast or whatever. But and that's where we have to go, I think. So someone sent me a picture of a Solana shop in New York, actually, and you are in New York, Austin. So I thought, have you been there? Obviously, you must have been.
I
What
have,
kind of
yeah.
shop is it? What do you do
So
there? What
this
can
is
you
not
buy?
actually run. This is not run by the foundation, but this is a group that had received, a small grant from the foundation to basically start a real-world onboarding shop for Solana. Now they do fun things like they sell merchandise from like NFT projects like Degenerate Ape Academy, and they sell, ASICs. The running shoe company made a Solana shoe, and like they'll sell things like that as well. But this is basically based off the thesis that Apple proved out really well in the 2000s, which is that if you want people to switch to a new platform, a whole chunk of the population needs a person they can talk to in a store somewhere, right? I think it's pretty well proven out from case studies and research that Apple would not be where it is today with both the Mac and the iPhone if they hadn't had the Apple stores and the Genius Bar and the ability for people to come in and talk to a person and ask questions. And so partially with the launch of the Saga phone and Solana mobile service stack and all those sorts of things, the idea of having a real world onboarding place to get, folks who, I would say we're not quite at normies yet, but maybe you're a gamer and this is blockchain gaming is becoming interesting to you, but like you're not really sure how the thing works. You don't really know how to keep your private key safe. You've never used a ledger before. The point of the store, and there's two of them now, one in Miami and one in New York, is that you can get some help on that process. And it's an experiment, right? Maybe these things work great, important. Maybe they don't.
Yeah, I think that's very important because I just remember how I struggled first time to try buy crypto.
Oh, totally. I mean, I lost my first Bitcoin because I didn't understand how to store the private keys. This was in 2011 or something like that. So
and you're not alone. There's so many out there. So many loose Bitcoins all over the world.
I know, right?
Dumpster somewhere. Anyway, I also have some questions from audience. Lots of people are sending stuff here, so
great.
I'm trying to organize myself, but but we also have someone who wanted to come up and talk a little bit. It's a project that's built on Solana, I think. Solcial. I'm sorry if I can't pronounce your name correctly. You know them, Austin? Maybe they want to talk of
why. Hey guys,
hey, how you doing?
Can you hear me?
Why you choose Solana?
Thanks for having us. So we definitely chose Solana primarily because it's fast, like you said, and because the fees are cheap, which is an essential point to bring Web 2 into Web 3. We felt like that was so we've studied a lot of blockchains, and really Solana stand out in many ways regarding also the ecosystem. When you look at wallets, it's so much more convenient to use Solana than other blockchains. But I wanted to say as well something regarding NFTs that you were discussing earlier. Solana is very well developed and active on the NFT side of things, but not only related to images and profile pictures and such things. We also use NFTs as content. For example, on social, so we are a social network, and we actually just launched to the public a couple of days ago. And people can post private content that is encrypted, and that can only be accessed to people that buy the content, which is an NFT. So effectively, people buying your private content, whatever it is, as a, for example, trading insights, market research, some reports, whatever insights you want to share. People will be able to access to this private content by effectively purchasing an NFT from you. And so NFTs can be so much more than simply what people might just think they are, as images or art or collectibles. They can also be content. They can also be really complex contracts even. And so the way we work with them at Social is you effectively purchase the NFT, which is private content for someone, and after that user logs in, you get the decryption key to unlock that content and to consume it, to view it. So yeah, NFT is really powerful tools, and much more than people can think of. And so we are using it this way, but I'm sure many other projects in the Solana ecosystem will be deploying all sorts of NFTs into their applications.
Great, thank you so much. Social.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's kind of the type of thing I was talking about like these new kinds of product integrations that really take advantage of some of the characteristics of the Solana network.
Yep, great to hear from project owners or project developers. So I'm going to read some questions, or one at least here from someone in the audience, Maurice from Caesar's Call. He can't speak. Usually he speaks himself so much, but he can't speak at the moment. So he says, amazing space so far. I have a statement and a question. As Bonk generated a ton of hype after the whole FTX collapse hurt the chain's image, people started to flock to the chain, but there was a lack of user protection, I felt, from the CA standpoint. That's contract, right? CA, or is it something else?
I'm not sure what they mean by the CA, but was that the full question?
California? No.
Yeah.
That's maybe this. I don't know. That's a question? Where do you have user protection? I think.
I guess I have a question regarding the meme culture. Like, Austin, what are your thoughts about the rise of the meme culture that's happened on Solana these past couple of weeks?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so here's one of the interesting things. Whenever you reduce the cost of something radically, you create something that's much more accessible to people all around the world. That has good and bad implications behind it, right? The cost of launching a project on Solana is significantly lower than launching something. You could not airdrop to hundreds of thousands of wallets tokens on Ethereum without paying very significant amounts of money in gas fees. You can do that on Solana. That definitely means that there are more meme projects on Solana. That also means that there are more sort of like, let's just call them shit coins that pop up from time to time too. My wallet is full of like random stuff I've never even heard of. And I think that's great, right? Like what we're really talking about here is if the point of blockchain is to remove the barriers to innovation, to create permissionless open infrastructure that anyone, anywhere around the world can access, it's got to be economically accessible to folks and it's going to be technologically accessible to folks. So if some of that comes out of awesome meme projects, that's great. But this is the yin and the yang of credibly neutral global infrastructure, is that there's no one looking out for you besides the security auditors and the wallet teams. Like you have to look out for yourself. You have to, it's a little bit of a joke to say do your own research these days, but really what this means is like it's kind of like a Spider-Man thing, right? With great power comes great responsibility, and that's what self-custody and blockchain is all about. I love to see the meme stuff pop up. Look, who knows, like from a price perspective, like, yeah, who knows what happens with this stuff, but like a bonk is fun, right? Like at the end of the day, it's really cool to have the community get really excited about, if it ends up being a fad, that's great. I think fundamentally what we're talking about is people having fun again.
Is bonk, is that from Solana itself or?
Oh no, not at all. It's totally a community project. I didn't
It
even
wasn't
pick up on it until
initiated
a few weeks
by
ago.
Solana to
Yeah, no, Solana Foundation and Solana Labs is not in the business of launching tokens or token projects or anything like that. These are all community initiatives that are popping up.
Okay. Okay, now I'm gonna continue with my question. Or were you finished? Yes.
No, it's good. Let's go for it.
Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
Okay. So from Maurice in Caesar's Call, how can you allow projects to launch with no max wallets or supply amounts and clearly no vetting or experience required? And
How could we not?
considering the adversity around Solana or Sol, wouldn't you want to do
I want to
more?
entirely reject the premise of this statement. I think if
Okay.
you are a believer in blockchain technology, you can't ask for there to be gatekeepers, you can't ask for there to be barriers, you can't ask for there to be a litmus test before someone's allowed to launch a project. So this is kind of what I was talking about there. User protection and safety is absolutely important, but I think that needs to be done at the wallet level, not at the network level. And there's wallets on Solana like Phantom that do a ton of work to actually keep users safe. They have a whole process where they scan transactions that might be malicious, and the same way that if you go to a website with a bad certificate, Chrome will pop up a button that says hey, are you sure you know what you're doing? If something looks off here. Wallets will do that too, but I want to wholly reject the premise that a layer 1 blockchain should be censoring any sort of transactions or data going over the network.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good answer. But he also said, considering the adversity around Sol, wouldn't you want to do more to earn that trust back on a new potential wave of investors? And then my question is also, how are you gonna get the trust back? Because it's a little bit hurt now after all this that happens, right? As we spoke about. And so what's your plan moving forward now to bring Solana back up there where I guess you think it belongs?
I mean, the thing we're quietly talking about here is not on-chain user activity, it's not developers, it's token price, right? Because what we're seeing is there's more developers building on Solana than there were before FTX crashed. There's more active addresses every day. Solana has more daily active users than any other blockchain, right? So what we're seeing is users are here, and from that perspective, the trust is there. I think from a macroeconomic standpoint, look, it's just a process of going through that. Ethereum had its $80 moment in 2018, where it dropped from 1,400 to 80, or from about what 1,100 to $80. Networks have been through this before, and it's really about how the community responds. No one has to join Solana network. I think you should. I think it's a really fun place. I think that some of the coolest tech and blockchain is being built here. But at the end of the day, this is a project that's in it for the long haul, right? And if that means that mainstream adoption of crypto in general is delayed 3, 4, 5 years, engineers who are building on Solana are still going to be here, building a system that's going to be able to handle all of the world's information whenever the world is ready for that.
Yeah, I think you guys had lots of practice with bad things or things that had to get fixed, right? And you fixed them so far, didn't you? Like the hacks and stuff that happened. I mean, not many old projects has had that. I mean, I like to see positive on all the bad things also that happen.
Oh, totally.
So
I mean,
to find
it's
solutions
trial by fire.
And move forward together like a stronger team maybe. And would you
Yeah,
say that's
exactly.
what's happened on Solana, or has it divided you also, or how have you handled all the situations that has come throwing at you the latest?
I think the initial week or two after FTX collapsed was really hard for a lot of folks on the network. There were a lot of developers who felt maybe discouraged or felt like maybe the network wasn't going to get through this. But what we've seen, in the 6 weeks since then is that folks are continuing to build. And I think that's one of the most impressive things is, again, the on-chain activity is up and users are continuing to flock to the network. And that's really great to see, right? I think that's a real sign of faith in the strength of this community.
Mm-hmm. And before we move on, so I don't do anything stupid here, Austin, do you have time to stay on a little bit longer because we have been here an hour already? I think we have.
Yeah, I have to
maybe
drop
some.
pretty soon, but I can hang
Okay,
out for 5 more
good to know.
minutes.
So yeah, I don't want to force you to stay on, but I mean, I would also like to hear your approach on Solana, more long-term vision. Like, where is Solana going to be in like 5 years from now? What's the vision or the hope
Yeah,
from
certainly.
your?
So there are a few different pieces of core technology that are kind of in the works. If you Anatoly did a talk at Breakpoint, which is our annual conference, on some of the really big challenges that like core network engineers are working on now, as well as ones coming in the future. I think if you fast forward 5 years, Solana still is not using sharding. It's still one fast global state for all of the world's transactions and information. And I think that global state piece is really important. That's kind of a core tenet of a lot of what the network is built around. But the real power of proof of history, which is not a consensus mechanism, but it's sort of a turbocharger on the consensus mechanism, is that you can have multiple concurrent block producers all around the world. And so that's kind of that big challenge that we're moving towards on a network level, is how do we make it possible for there to be multiple leaders producing blocks at the same time without relying on sharding to accomplish that? That is the sort of the end state goal of the network, is that latency is reduced by having to the closest leader by having multiple leaders concurrently producing blocks. And then what the cool thing about proof of history is, every transaction that comes in is not exactly timestamped, but it's sort of timestamped by a distributed variable delay, a verifiable delay function, which means you can sort of take two halves of a zipper and rezip it together, and you can get a complete transaction history of what happened. And I think that's kind of the really cool stuff we start getting into in blockchain. And the analogy here is like Google in the 2000s was focused on sort of centralized, incredibly high performance systems. And Solana is not centralized by any means. It's actually one of the most decentralized blockchains out there, but there is one leader at a time, right? And by moving those leaders all around the world, we're going to be able to massively increase throughput and also decrease the latency of talking to a validator. Because when the blocks move at 400 milliseconds, if you have to go from New York to Singapore to send a transaction, that's a meaningful amount of time. But if there was a validator, in France that I could talk to instead that was also producing a block at the exact same time, then what that means is that the latency is reduced. And so my ability to land a transaction on the network is not going to be disadvantaged any compared to someone who is closer to Singapore in this example. And I think that's one of the really important things about it, is all these are basically mechanisms for fairness that are getting built into the network as we try and look at like what we need to be able to handle, 1 million transactions per second or more.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're at the moment, people call it a bear market, but as you said, lots of people are now developing and building for the future, and I think the next phase in this what do you call it, like, yeah, in crypto, it will be so interesting. And we are already here, we are already in this, guys. We know stuff already. Everyone in here knows things, and we have to help the ones who come after us now to help them get into crypto. I think no financial advice, but they can learn it anyway. So yeah, it's lovely to have you here, Austin. I would love to invite you back, because I think 1 hour is too little time to talk about a project like Solana. It's like, yeah, you could talk for hours probably. And yeah, I know you have to go.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, it was, right? And
Yes.
I will definitely invite you again. I'm going to follow you now,
Excellent.
so we have each other there. But thank you also, Jess and Soul Shell, for coming up and talking a little bit and asking questions. We also have Sergic in here. I invited you to come up, but probably didn't have time. And Also, James from StepN was in here listening, and yeah, lots of people.
Thank you so much, guys.
Awesome.
Thanks for organizing. Thanks, Austin, for showing up. And yeah,
Thanks.
see you next time.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so
Bye.
much. And Austin, did you want to have some closing statement? And also, I want to ask you if you like pineapple on your pizza or not.
Do I like pineapple on my pizza? I honestly don't have a strong opinion on it. My default would be no, but like
Have
if
you
that's the
tried
pizza
it?
that shows up, I will eat it. Oh, I've tried it. Yes.
If you're hungry, right?
Yeah, there's a place near where I used to live that had a really good uh barbecue chicken pineapple pizza.
Oh,
So,
sounds really
you know,
good. I would try that.
yeah.
Jess is laughing. Jess, do you like pineapple on
No,
your
that's
pizza?
a no for me. Sorry, Austin. I draw the
That's
line
fine.
there.
It's not my favorite, but you know, I can appreciate it.
What would you never put on a pizza, Austin?
I actually I will say that I'm pretty open to most foods. I actually really enjoy food, and so I will never say never to anything because I have been surprised about the weird stuff that I've eaten before that actually is delicious and like you know, it's just like chefs know what they're doing. And so if someone wants to feed me a pizza with weird stuff on it, as long as they tell me it's good, I'll definitely try a bite.
So what is the weirdest thing that you have ever eaten then?
The weirdest thing. Um,
Sorry, this is going to food now.
what's the weirdest thing? Okay. So there was one place I was in I think this was in Singapore that had a okay, so it was like a foam and then there was like frozen green curry and there
Oh.
was raw cod at the bottom of it and it was super weird
What
and it
is
was
that?
actually really
Raw cod?
good.
Is that fish, you mean?
Fish.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah,
So
okay.
that's definitely a weird
Was it
thing
good?
I've eaten. Oh, it was great. It was delicious.
Okay. Yeah, we're
Also like
going off track here,
all
but
those weird candies you get from Japan, sometimes like that are like candies but then taste like I don't know corn or something. Very, very, very interesting, fun flavor palettes come out of Asian snacks.
yeah. Lots of fun stuff out there to try, guys.
Yes.
No food advice in here either, but
No. Well, it's still NFA, right?
no, yeah. All right, Austin. It was lovely to have you. So tell us some really good news about Solana, what's coming, if you have some, or something else that you
Go
want to
check out the
say.
Financer demo from Breakpoint. The second validate. This is a real big thing we didn't get to spend a ton of time on, but this is the first network after Ethereum to have an alternate implementation of a validator client. Go check out the demo that they did at Breakpoint. You can find them on Twitter at jump_firedancer. I think that's one of the coolest projects from like an infrastructure and technical level that's getting worked on right now on the network.
That's one of the
So
coolest names I've ever heard, also, Fire Dancer.
yeah,
Oh, are they dancing
it's gonna be
salsa
fun.
or Solana? I wonder.
Yeah, right. No, I think it's I think the name comes from just like the idea that we're gonna flood so much data through the wires they're gonna catch on fire.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
a cool project.
Great. Great,
Cool.
great.
Well, thanks for
So,
having me
all
on
right.
today.
We're looking forward to see where Solana is in 5 years and follow